Hello, this is Dr. Dawn Michael, your politically incorrect sex counselor. Welcome to my program, and today we're going to talk about something that affects most couples. And it can happen in the beginning of a relationship, it can happen in a long-term relationship, but it usually is something that can become a big problem if it is not resolved over time. And that is you and your spouse or you and your significant other are not sexually in sync, meaning that you don't desire each other or want to have sex with each other at the same time. Now, couples that are in sync together, meaning that they kind of have a routine, they know when they're going to have sex, it's an unspoken thing between the two of them, and it just comes naturally in the relationship. It's usually because they're in sync with one another sexually. And it's not a big deal in the relationship because it just happens. When it becomes a major issue is when the couple is not in sync with each other, and when one person is desiring it and maybe the other person is not. Now, this can happen very early in a relationship. And if it does, if that is you, it's something that you really need to talk to your significant other about so that you can resolve it. One of the things that happens is you can start off where you have, a certain pattern in your relationship where you're having sex and maybe that gets interrupted. It could be a health issue. It could be children, are involved. You're giving birth, or you're going through pregnancy, or there's some other issue that comes into play where it kind of throws off your sex life for a while. But then maybe you get back into the swing of things and you continue to just have in sync sex. But then there's many couples that don't. And so if you catch the problem early on, then you can fix it. If you don't, then what happens is a person develops a natural sexual pattern. So where you would be having a release once a week or twice a week or whatever, it really depends on the person and the couple. Now you're no longer having it with your significant other or your spouse, which means that you're masturbating while you're not having sex with them. And the more that this takes place, where the masturbation takes precedence over having sex with your significant other, the more that your in sync pattern is not going to work. Meaning that one person is releasing themselves sexually and the other person is not at all. So the more that you masturbate or the more that you release, the more that your body gets used to it and the more that you want it. The less you do it, the less you want it. And so here you see the great divide happening, and this happens to many couples. Typically, it's the man who continues with the masturbation throughout the relationship, and the woman usually does not. That's not always the case, but more so than not, it is the man who continues to masturbate, whether he's having sex or not, with his wife or significant other, and the woman tends to not masturbate. And so she gets used to not having to release. He gets used to having to release, and now they're not in sync anymore. So the way to fix this is to even it out. So you can either have her start to masturbate more or him start to masturbate less, and in that time, have sex. The easiest way to do it is to set up a time where the couple can start routinely being intimate with one another, and for the person who is masturbating to stop masturbating in that time period so that their body is not going to want that release and it be so intense. Because that feeling, you're not going to be able to connect with your spouse in a loving, tender way if you're constantly being driven sexually. So the sex drive cannot outweigh the connection that the two of you have. And if you're constantly masturbating, that sex drive or that sexual hunger is going to be even stronger. And people think that it's the other way, but that's not necessarily true. The more that you do something, the more that your body gets used to it, the more that your brain gets used to it, and the more that you want it. The less that you're involved with it, you're doing other things that are occupying your time, your mind, your body. And so that way, the two of you can maybe get in sync with one another and come up with a plan as to when to expect sex. And that's another issue as well that couples have, is that they don't know when they're going to be having sex. And so let's say the man is like, I don't know when I'm going to have sex with my wife, so I'm just going to masturbate. And then again, the couple is not in sync with one another, and this great divide between the two of them happens, it's even worse. So you have to really work together to say, okay, we're going to make a plan to have a night where we're intimate with one another, and keep that plan so both of you know that that's the time. And in between, you don't masturbate or watch porn or do something that you would normally do, so that you can both get in sync with one another. That's probably one of the best ways to go about it. But again, you both have to work on it together. It can't be one person working on it and the other person not working on it. You have to work on it as a team. And truly, a good partnership, a good marriage relationship, sex is a part of it. And two people have to actively work on it, whether it's maintaining it, whether it's figuring out when you're going to spend that time with one another, because it's unique to the two of you, and you're expecting to be each other's soul sex partner. And with that expectation, then you have to be able to be intimate with one another, or you have to come up with some other way for the other person to accommodate their desires. And you have to figure out in the relationship what is acceptable to you. Now, for instance, if you just have no desire, let's say you're a woman and you just don't have any desire, but your husband does have a desire, the first step would be to figure out why you don't have desire. Is it hormonal? Is it that you maybe are having issues in the relationship? Perhaps you're angry at your husband, or you're resentful, or he's doing things that are making you not feel loving towards him, or that you don't want to connect with him sexually anymore. You have to find out for yourself, do you still feel desire? Whether it's in your marriage or not, do you feel desire at all? If you don't feel desire, you need to find out if it's a medical condition. So you need to take it upon yourself in a marriage, because it's the two of you, to fix it. So let's say that you don't feel desire, you don't want to have sex, but your spouse does want to have sex and does have desire. What are you going to do to remedy the situation? Because the person who feels desire and wants to be sexual, they're basically cut off from that, and that's not fair either. So you have to figure out, is it that the marriage maybe is just a friendship now to one of you? Is it that you're going to have an open marriage? Is it that maybe you're okay, the person who wants to be desirous, taking care of yourself, and then having, more of a intimate relationship? You figure that out. So each couple has to really decide what's best for them, but not talking about it and not dealing with it is not okay. And making somebody feel bad about it because they do still have sexual desire and maybe you don't, that's not okay either. So you have to work on this situation and figure out how to deal with it. That's what I help my clients with, is many times they will be out of sync sexually, and it's very frustrating. It can be a very painful experience, and so it's really important, to find that balance in your relationship and get help if you're not able to do it on your own. But I did point out some of the key issues that I talk with people about when helping them in counseling. And sometimes you need to just go in and talk to a counselor alone and figure out maybe why you don't feel desire or what's going on in the relationship. Because desire is not just it's not just its own thing. It's especially for women, but I will say for men too. It's also emotional. Do you feel emotionally desirous towards your partner? Do you feel that you're attracted to them sexually? How do you feel about your own body? You know, sometimes people don't feel desirous because they don't feel good about themselves and they beat themselves down, or they don't want to expose their body because they're not feeling good about themselves. Well, okay, but you need to work on it. That's not an excuse not to share that part of you when you're married, because the expectation is you're each other's sexual partners. So you have to be realistic about what's going on. So these are some of the issues that are important to bring up if you are going to be in counseling, or if you want to have an open conversation with your partner. These are really important things to talk about if you want to have a good, healthy relationship. Because really, the worst thing is being in an unhealthy relationship where you're not happy with your spouse, you're stressed out all the time, you guys are fighting. There is nothing worse than that. You could go out and work can be hard. You know, it could be hard raising children. But when your relationship is constantly on the rocks and you are constantly fighting, it's very, very taxing and it's very unhealthy. And it's just something that people shouldn't live in for long periods of time. They really need to resolve it and figure out how to make their life better. All right, guys, I hope that this video gave you some insight and some help. And if you need to reach me or set up an appointment, you can reach me at thehappyspouse.com. All right, as you know, I believe everyone deserves to have a healthy sex life, and so do you.